am a clinical certified sexologist. I am a relationship coach, a life coach, a mom, a wife. I've been married for 10 years, so I think I can say a little something about my recipe for love. Definitely goal is to make sure that we get everybody on the same page where they can use the tools to apply these things to their relationship so they can have long-lasting relationships and thrive like the rest of us. So that's my spiel. And hey, Faith, thanks for popping on.
Yeah, I agree with that, Tiffany. I'm really interested in making sure Black love lasts. So
Right.
that's why we're here tonight. So first tip, and I'll go ahead and get started. First tip I have is in your relationship, it's important that each individual take responsibility for their part in the relationship. Meaning, you can only control what you can do yourself. You can only control how you treat the person. So by taking responsibility, you're acknowledging your part you play, and you control your emotions. You control, how you respond. You control, the time you put into your relationships, the way you respond, your tone of voice. You can control that. So just take responsibility. You take responsibility for your actions in the relationship.
Absolutely. And even just to add to that, knowing when you take responsibility for your actions, accountability is being aware that you are human and showing humility, and knowing like to show humility, you have to be able to say, I'm human, I mess up, and I think a lot of times in relationships, we don't like to show humility because we don't want to seem like the weaker vessel in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And just to share something funny that happened, that's funny that you said take responsibility. I was actually going to post this later, and my husband has been asking like where all these water bottles are coming around the house, and he was like, why are all these water bottles? Whose water bottles? And everybody's like, I don't know. So I went around the house and I said, hey, put all the water bottles in this specific area. And then I went in from my office and I grabbed like a lot of water bottles, and I called my husband out of the bathroom and I said, hey, what do you want to do about this? And he's like, what? I said, I'm pretty sure that water bottle problem is 80% me, maybe 90%. And it's like 12 water bottles and they're full. And he's like, I said, what do you think we should do about this? And he was looking at me, and it's funny because my 14-year-old comes in the room, and I'm looking at her, and he's looking at me, and I said, because I'm going to take accountability that this is my problem. Do you think that I should not use water bottles anymore? And he said, I think that's best. I think you should use refrigerator water. And I think that's huge, because in that moment, instead of blaming or trying to figure out who was it, it was like, me, it's me. Let me take accountability for me and let's fix it so we don't have to keep coming back to this problem.
I love it. Yeah, and one thing I wrote down is I said to ask yourself also, as far as taking a responsibility for your part in the relationship. So I challenge everyone to ask themselves if they're giving the relationship the time and the maintenance that it needs to be successful.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And a lot
so
of people
ask
don't.
yourself that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you say that, I think people need to hear that when she says give yourself time, it's not putting a time clock on it and putting a specific time where you have 2 hours and 45 minutes to have this relationship perfected. It's saying give it time to grow, just as you did as a person, as you grew as into an adult. I think sometimes we misconstrue the use of time because you can say it in so many different forms. And she's saying, give yourself time, give yourself room to grow. So you're not putting a time limit on yourself and you're saying, well, this ain't going to work because you didn't do it in my time frame.
Exactly.
So our second one would be keeping a strong romantic attraction. A lot of people do not think this is important. I just saw a video about why shouldn't a man expect his woman to come to bed dressed sexy? I think Steven posted this, and I'm like, that's true. And I'm like, why do I not come to bed like that? Like, what is the reasoning for that? But one thing I do make sure is that I always, even when I was fat, and I was fat I was really fat. I was 210 pounds for like a good year and a half.
What?
And yeah. And even when I was fat, I always made sure I kept my hair done. Like, I always wanted to look nice, because honestly, if I could be honest, I felt sorry for my husband that he had to walk around with a fat girl. Because he's fine and he's skinny. But being that and saying, like, you know, making sure that I keep the upkeep on myself as far as long with him, because he gets his hair cut weekly. But making sure that I stay within myself and making sure that I take care of myself, because self-care is huge. And you treat your partner how you treat yourself. And a lot of us treat our partner crappy because we don't take the time to make sure that we are whole within. And so that is important. And that romantic attraction is like, if you're fat and you look sloppy, you need to get yourself together. If you're skinny and you're not tightened up, but you're just like, I'm skinny, you need to get yourself together if that's the requirement for your relationship. And I don't see a problem with that, because that's how they got you. Love grows and love evolves. And no, love never disappears, but the value of somebody does go down when you don't take care of yourself. Can you imagine a diamond ring all dusty and stuff and gross is not going to be worth a lot of money if it looks like that and you take it into the appraiser? They're going to ask you to clean it up. And so it's the same thing with ourselves. Clean yourself up and be presentable to the person and be attractive to that person to create that spark for long-lasting love.
That's so true. And I think, you know, what happens sometimes when we've been with the same person for a long time, you just kind of get comfortable. You think, oh, it don't matter if I got my big baggy panties on. He knows I love him. No, the same thing it took to get him, you got to do to keep him, right?
Right.
So I like what you just said about, you know, just making that extra effort. Put on some lipstick. Put on some tight jeans, girl.
Right.
You give him something to look forward to, you know, so that he doesn't, you know, that, or not him, just him, but men too. Men also need to be responsible for their appearance. They need to keep themselves up. If they notice that belly getting hanging over their belt, they need to start doing some crunches or something. I mean, everyone needs to play a part, you know. Like I said, take the responsibility of what your part is in the relationship.
Absolutely.
My number two is to be reliable. You know, make sure your partner can rely on you, can trust that what you say you're gonna do, you're gonna do. Baby, I'm on my way home. Okay, how far? 15, 20 minutes. Okay, all right, be on your way home. If you can't make that time, baby, I'm running a little late. I mean, just communicate, you know, make sure that she's aware that you are at least trying to be trustworthy, be reliable, know that she can depend on what you say is going to happen, right?
Yeah. I'm posting our long-lasting love, posting our live in some groups. I wanted to add to what you were saying about being reliable. A lot of times men misconstrue our wanting to know where you're at, how long are you going to be, for control. And I think that if we were able to be vulnerable with them and to tell them, it's because you're a Black man in America.
Oh, that's right.
It's because I want to make sure that you're safe. I want to make sure that you make it home to me. I don't know what I would do without you. I would be devastated. I want to be there for you. I think a lot of us don't really figure out what that means to us when they're not coming, when they don't communicate with us about where they're at, how far they're going to be, or whatever. And a lot of it is really based on safety
Yeah.
and knowing the
Being able
comfort
to
in your heart.
relax and not
Yeah.
be worried. I mean, you don't want to be worried, but in this day and age, you just can't help but be worried and be concerned, you know. So just being able to know that, hey, what he says is gonna happen. If he says 9 o'clock, then he gonna be here by 9:05, or he's gonna text me. That also helps build trust. And what
Right.
is a relationship without trust, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And a lot of us, we need to realize that trust is built in tiny moments. It's not something grand that happens where you're just like, oh my God, I trust you now. It's built in, did that 15 to 20 minutes, did you make it in that time frame?
Yeah.
Did you show up when you said you were going to show up, and did you take accountability for when you didn't show
Mm.
up?
Yeah, so that's key. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Accountability, like, okay, I'm not gonna make it like I said, so let her know so that she can relax, you know. Let me
And then I could trust you.
or him, as well as us females. I keep referring to like the man, you know, is the only one, but it's us too. We all females also need to be trustworthy. We need to be reliable. We need to say what we mean, what we say, and do it, you know, and be trustworthy. It goes both ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My second one is the ability to compromise.
Mm.
And I think we look at compromise as a bad thing. We think as compromise as losing. And what we have to figure out is that every way is not the right way. And so if you are a powerful couple and you believe in each other and you know the intent of each other's heart, a compromise is a win for you
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a partnership, both people should feel comfortable about where we are headed or where we are going. And a lot of times when one person wants to go another way, sometimes if you let that person lead you, it'll take you to greater things if you allow yourself to compromise. And we limit ourselves on compromise because we get so caught up in our way is the right way, when
True.
really it's what is our objective? What are we trying to obtain? What is
Right.
the goal? And a lot of us, we forget that goal because the goal then becomes, I want to be right, when the goal is, I just want to make sure our house is clean on
Right.
Saturdays, right?
Right.
And so compromise is just a discussion. It's about laying out why you think something should go that way. What are the pros? What are the cons? And how can we work towards that? If you remove the feeling and the need to be right,
Mm.
compromising with your partner goes a long way and comes actually naturally. And you feel like you're winning all the time. I make
Yeah.
compromises every day because I know the objective is to have a long lasting relationship. It's
Yeah.
not for me just to think that I'm right all the time in my way or the highway, because
Right.
my way is just an idea of how to get something started. It's not necessarily how it's going to get it completed.
That's so true. That's so true. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges for newlyweds is learning that that's a huge part of marriage, right? Compromise. Like you got to get that down pat because otherwise it's going to be rocky.
Absolutely.
It's going to be rocky. You're going to because it's two different personalities coming together and somebody's going to have to give. And if that doesn't happen, then yeah, you're going to have challenges. So that's why we're here today. We're trying to help make love work, right? Number 3, forgive easily. Keeping in mind that everybody makes mistakes, right? I make mistakes, you make mistakes. Everybody has a bad day. Being able to realize that maybe you just had a bad day. Maybe maybe it was a mistake. I mean, it's just so much freedom for you when you forgive because the other person, they done moved on. You holding a grudge, the other person done moved on. They living
Right?
happy, and you're the one holding on to making you sick. It's making you angry. You're the one that's losing. So forgive easily. Forgive easily.
Absolutely. And people want rather hold on and harbor anger and resentment when it is easy to forgive. And actually, let me take that back. It is not easy to forgive. It's hard. It's hard to forgive. It's easy to stay mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is very easy to stay mad. When I say it's easy to forgive, it's easy for me to forgive when I get in the habit of doing something and I see the benefit of it. Anything when you see the benefit of it becomes easy. It is hard for me to stay mad at people because I feel like it's a weight that I don't have room to carry. And so, right? And I tell people all the time, I'm like, when I go on a plane, it's carry on only. You cannot fit in my bag.
Love that.
And so I can't carry that with me, you know, and I want to carry good things that sustain me, not things that weigh me down and don't allow me to move into my purpose and to evolve. And lack of forgiveness, especially in relationships, puts you in a place of misery.
Yeah, in the long run, it does.
You know, and then what we all know is misery loves company. So you look for people that are also miserable so you can enjoy their company.
Yeah. And that's
so right.
Nobody wants to be miserable.
Absolutely.
Life is too short, first of all. You know, that's
absolutely. I agree.
Move on. So, and forgive.
Yeah. So were we done with that one?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. So my next one is understanding. It takes, in order to understand, it takes 3 components. You need wisdom, discernment to get to any type of understanding. If you miss that, if you miss any of those things, and then you have to gain insight. And so in order to even speak about the understanding, you have to gain those 3 things before you can have insight to it, be able to talk. And your discernment is good judgment about, is this something that we should be talking about? Is this something that we should even be addressing in this moment? And so couples lack understanding because they love confusion, and they will scrounge up money for confusion. There's a meme out there and it says the price of peace is free or something. It says something about the price of peace or something. I can't remember. But in my mind, I say you'll scrounge up every dime that you have for confusion. You will scrounge up change to seek out confusion because that's what you're comfortable in. And understanding is asking questions. In order to understand somebody, you have to ask questions. I was speaking last night, and I was telling couples last night, I'm like, if you stop making statements and you move to asking questions, you now have placed the ball in the other person's hand that will help you understand. But you have to take time and think about the questions that you are asking. You cannot just shoot out ask. You have to listen to what that person's response is. And then process what your next question is. And sometimes that doesn't happen in a 30-minute conversation. Sometimes it takes walking away and saying, hey, can we revisit this? I need time to think. And so in order to have a long-lasting relationship, understanding is huge. And if you lack that, that is why me and Kathy are here, because we are trained in leading people to help them get a better understanding of each other, to make sure that they can have long-lasting love. And one thing about understanding I want to add is knowing, like, when you can be solo and when you want to be united with your partner, right? There's a lot of people that think they need to do everything with their partner. And then you got people that are like, I don't want to do nothing with my partner. Well, it has to be a mix. And if you guys have the understanding that I need to let you be your own person while I come and visit you in your realm, that is okay. And so having that understanding and knowing that is what keeps a relationship long lasting.
I agree. I like what you just said about, I mean, it's so important that you keep your individuality in your relationship. Like it's good to do a lot of things together. You definitely need to have some common things, but you also need that thing that makes you separate, and you can go out and get your free air, and then come back together and do whatever you do well together.
Right.
I also, like you just touched on the fact, listen, that goes right along with understanding. You can't get understanding if you don't listen to your partner when they're communicating with you. I mean, being able to just sit and listen and let an individual finish their entire statement without you thinking in your head, okay, what, I already know I'm going to respond with this. When you're thinking like you're not listening, you're not actively listening. To actively listen is to really literally just let the person speak their whole statement. And once they're finished, repeat back what you think they just, what they just spoke to you, to make sure you have an understanding, right? That
and you heard them.
Understanding, and to make sure you got a clear understanding, and then that lets them know that you're fully listening. You didn't cut them off, and you actually heard what they said. Or if you didn't hear what they said, then you ask the question, like you just said, to clarify, so that you get that understanding.
Absolutely. And with listening and understanding, you have to check your emotions at the door. You have to, you cannot bring them into a conversation with lack of information. True. And a lot of us will bring all our feelings into a situation, unleash them, and then have to reel them back in and apologize for things that we weren't ready for those emotions to come out with. True. You have to know your emotions should be like a guest. And that guest should have to be invited after you have got the invitation to where they need to go. And
emotions, women are such emotional creatures, though. Like that's going to be a challenge,
You can pause that, though. You can say in your mind, I don't know everything right now, so let me hear, let me listen. Mm-hmm. Let me understand before I attach any emotion to that, because I'm not saying that you cannot be mad or sad about what you did, what you just heard.
Right.
It's about prematurely attaching things to stuff that you weren't ready to, where it wasn't ready to come out, right? And then I'd rather not apologize for things that I have better control of. My best friend posted yesterday, and she said, it's not people don't lack guidance, they lack discipline.
That's true.
And it is because it's more about
vanilla. We're just talking about relationships and making love work. Go ahead, Tiffany. I was just
sorry. There was a man at my door, and my daughter was going to answer, so I wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
But I was saying that making sure that I don't know what I was saying, to be honest with you. Let me not lie. I don't remember.
That's okay. What's your next tip?
My next tip would be love and respect. Mm-hmm. In order to keep a long-lasting relationship, love and respect is necessary. And another thing I taught last night is there's a book written by Dr. Emmerich, I think, and it's called Love and Respect. And a lot of people don't realize is that we all were created by the manufacturer, which is God or whoever you believe in. Mm-hmm. And the way he made us up was with different ingredients and some of the same ingredients. And so one main ingredient that we both have, but men have more of it in them, is respect. And one ingredient that we have more of in ours is love. That's how God created us. And when you lack those to each other, you take away things from them that you don't even know you're taking away. So when a wife does not feel like she is being loved, she takes away respect, thinking that that's going to give her more love.
Oh, yes.
And when a man does not feel respected, he takes away love, thinking that he's going to gain respect by taking some away from somebody. Mm-hmm. What I'm coming to find out is anytime you take something away from somebody that they need as far as to fuel them, you are not teaching them anything. You are teaching them, you are making them survive with less of what they need. And then they go into fight or flight mode. And so with women, we become very verbally disrespectful when we don't feel loved.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and with men, they become so unloving and so detached, right? Think about it. If you ever ask a woman, does she love her husband, right? She'd say, yeah, I love him. But if you ever ask a man, does his wife love him? He'll say, yeah, but she doesn't like me. And so those components are huge to having a long-lasting relationship, because they play a factor in all the other things that me and you are talking about. If you don't respect somebody, you're never going to understand them. You're never going to hold them. You're never going to hold accountable. You're never going to take accountability. You know, all those things disappear. Same thing with love. You know, if you don't love somebody, you're not going to have a romantic attraction to them.
Right.
You know, you're going to be like, oh, this person gets on my nerves. I'm just disgusted with them or whatever. And we have to realize that in the Bible, love and respect was not conditional. It's unconditional. You don't get to choose when you take it away. It's they're supposed to work simultaneously, because that's how each other are fueled. So without that, you will lack the ingredient for long-lasting love.
I agree. I love how you put that, love and respect, because a man does, I mean, if he doesn't feel respected, I mean, he's probably not even going to be attracted to you sexually. You know,
right?
He's not gonna want to be intimate. He's not gonna even respect you either. Right. Yeah, that's powerful. Love that, Tiff. Thank you. Okay, the last one I have is to communicate. Communicate your needs. You know, if you need a hug every day when your partner comes in, communicate that. If you need him to take out the garbage when he smells it stinking, baby, I need you to take out the garbage when you smell it. Communicate that, you know, but it's all about how you communicate it. You know, communicate it with love, communicate it with respect, you know,
Right.
How you would like to be communicated. That's the same communication you should share. Oh, someone is saying that no communications popped up for this live. Hi, Natasha. You know, so basically, I'm with communication. I just say, you know, communicate your expectations. You know, let your partner know what you expect, what you want, what turns you on, what turns you off, what's your fantasy. You know, just communicate. I mean, open communication builds the trust, builds respect. You know, it makes you vulnerable. And sometimes that's a challenge, to be just vulnerable to your partner. But that's so valuable, because when you can be open and vulnerable, you can trust that person with your everything. That is really what bonds the relationship. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You know, I actually agree. That was my last one, is intimacy. Was, you know, if you don't have that, and I think people have the wrong idea of what intimacy is. And intimacy, me and Bridget talked about it a few days ago, is into me, you know, and it's discovery, and it's figuring out who you are, because a lot of us can't communicate what we need because we have no idea. It doesn't exist because we've never actually said it out of this. We've only thought it in this. And the thought came from the TV or the internet. It was a preloaded thought. And I always ask people, like, where did this expectation come from? You know, that we're supposed to do all these things when you're in a relationship. And so intimacy is broken down into a couple different levels, as I'm learning, is like emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, and then you have sexual intimacy. And some people get caught up on the sexual intimacy, and that's all they see. But sexual intimacy will never sustain your relationship. It is probably, to us, sex is probably the frosting on the cake. and it is about how it makes the cake delicious.
That's right.
And you have to understand that you can't have frosting without a cake. You have to have the ingredients that make up the cake, that put it in the oven and actually bake the cake, so then you can put the frosting on the cake, and that's what sexual intimacy is. But in order to even get there, you have to have emotional intimacy. You have to have an intellectual intimacy where we talk about things that are not just in our house, but are outside of our house, so we can challenge each other's minds. You know, where we feel challenged by that discovery of, oh, I didn't know that about you, you know. We have to challenge each other's about the bad thoughts that go in our head. You know, like, man, I didn't think I was good enough. Well, you know, and so your partner can be supportive and be there for you and allow. A lot of times we expect our partner to show up to a track meet, right? But we didn't even tell them that we had a meet. You know what I'm saying?
That's so true. That's true. And I like what Natasha said, mind reading.
Yeah. And so it's like, you cannot do that. And I say this all the time, like, we evolve every single day. And if we evolve every single day and you have that knowledge to you puts you in the know. You are no longer ignorant, lack of knowledge about the other person and yourself growing. If that is the case, it is your responsibility to update that person about your new self, your self-discovery, if that is your forever partner. And
like that.
It's interesting when long-term couples get, like, when their kids leave the nest, right? And now they're having all these issues because you put all your focus on your children, but you have to remember what got your children was that,
all the time.
Right, was the love that you had created from that. And the kids will leave the house. I remember my father said the most hurtful, but the most meaningful thing to me one day. We were in an argument. I was like 19. And he said, I do not live for you. I live for myself. Because when you grow up and you leave and get your family, which I've done, I barely answer the phone. I'm like, horrible. I need to get better. When you leave, you'll forget about me. And and what will I do then? And I feel as if, speaking from my own experience, my father didn't know how to balance that. You know, and we as moms get into that where we become not really great balancing acts. We put more effort into what we created and not into what the manufacturer created. Right? Because if you don't love your whole self, how are you putting that into your children? How are your children being able to see that you can be intimate with their father, and when they leave the house, they can be intimate with their partner?
Right.
And we don't understand, it's a domino effect. And we try so hard to keep things from our children, you know, and from being us. Last night, one mom was like, well, I'm doing everything. I got to just stop. You created that expectation. You, not your husband. You laid that out when you got together and started doing all this stuff and being everything. And then you got overwhelmed and never had a conversation about, this is too much.
Wow. Yeah.
My kids, something funny happened today. My daughter, we've been cleaning up, you know, we've been doing all this stuff. I clean up all the time. And I had to break it down to her. And I was like, are we just going to discredit all the years that I cleaned up after you? And she was like, you know, she needed to be reminded. But what we ended up doing is we ended up breaking the house down room by room. And everybody was we had a family meeting, and we basically said, who's responsible for the majority of the mess in each room, right? And by the time the calculations came in, it was the two kids. And we said to them, why do you expect us to clean up after you? We raised you enough to clean up after yourself. Right. But what it showed was my vulnerability to say, I can't do this no more. Because it drains me, and then it makes me not want to deal with you, and then I become the worst of me.
Yes.
You know, and telling your kids or your husband, I'm not in the mind space to talk right now. I don't have it with me, you know, because we're creating supernatural and superhuman idealistic figures out of ourselves to our
Yeah.
husband and our kids, and then being
Yeah.
mad that they have the expectation that we are superwoman.
Right. Right. And another, what I want to add to that is a lot of times when the kids are younger, you do have to put more time into them. But as they get to be older and they can take more more responsibility, it is important that the couples come back together and start date night,
Yep.
start hanging out with just them two and getting a babysitter and, really rebuilding their relationships, so that when those kids are gone, they're not strangers, they
Right.
still know each other. They can still laugh and have fun with one another. I mean, that's so important. And yeah, kids, it can be challenging when you have kids. They don't fully understand, but in the long run, they appreciate it because they see how good their parents were together. That way, they can have a healthy relationship with their
Right.
partners.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that when we lack, I remember what ended up changing my mind about this is my daughter came to me and she said, "I never thought you cried. I thought nothing bothered you." And I
Wow.
said, "That's because I go in the bathroom and I cry." And then I
Uh-huh.
thought to myself, why am I hiding who I need you to be?
Mm.
God gave me stewardship over you to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that I lead you in the right way. Why would I teach you habits that will one
Yeah.
day be your downfall? Well,
Yeah.
one day where you'll be where nobody gets me. I
Yeah.
don't want to contribute to that. And I don't
Yeah.
want to contribute to the idea to my husband that the moment that I hit rock bottom and I can't do all the things that I was doing, that he goes seek somebody else because it was never realistic to begin with,
Right.
you know, and
Good
telling him
point.
what is in my capacity to give and knowing that
Mm-hmm.
about myself. But
Mm-hmm.
when you deal with self-ignorance, the chances of you having relational ignorance, lack of knowledge of your relationship, and lack of knowledge of yourself are not slim. They're pretty wide because when you choose not to know something or find
Yeah.
out about something, you're
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm going to admit that there's any truth to anything going on. I'm just going to act like nothing's going on, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything
Denial.
for ourselves, right?
No, it's denial. Yeah. It's freedom in being just vulnerable, especially with your partner. We already talked about
Absolutely.
that. Being open and vulnerable and letting them know, no, I'm not superwoman. I do cry. Yeah, real tears. Yeah.
Right.
It's hard to let your kids see you cry because you don't want them to think you are hurt. But, it's real. That's
And that's
realistic.
the
That's
thing
real.
though. Why wouldn't you want them to think that you're hurt so they can actually see how to process hurt?
That's a good point. That's so
You're
true.
you, you're asking your kids to go out in the world and figure it out for themselves when you are the tool and the role model that God placed in their lives to begin with. Why are we
Mm,
shielding them from all these things that they have to go find out for themselves? What's the point of me?
that's true.
The
Hmm.
point of me is to teach you in the most right way and most relative way that you can understand, so I prepare you for that. A lot of us
Yes.
adults now that are our age can say that our parents did not prepare us well for the real world. Why?
Mhm.
Because they sheltered us and hid things from us that they didn't think that was important. They
Yes.
sheltered how to have conflict resolution, but showing that two parents can make up and apologize
Mm.
to each
Yeah.
other. Showing kids that you don't have to argue about anything. You could have a discussion and talk about it, and you both can have difference of opinions. That is
Hmm.
what creates long lasting love, and then a legacy to promote and be a fruit of the spirit for long lasting love. We are supposed to multiply our fruit, and it's supposed to be good fruit. So whatever I put out and comes from my tree needs to be multiplied in the way that I'm doing it well also, and so they can do it better.
Yes, girl. That's good. That's good. And that's why these conversations are necessary.
Absolutely.
Um, I, I think we've completed all our points, our 10 points for tonight. I appreciate you all hanging in there with us. We had a little technical difficulty, but we figured it out. I hope you enjoyed this conversation we had. We are, like I said, we are clinical sexologist. We are open to your questions. If you have any questions for Tiffany or myself, feel free to DM me, direct message me, and we will come back and do this again and answer those questions, and keep the conversation going. We want, this is a learning experience for us too.
Absolutely.
But we really want to be the ones to make the difference in relationships out there, especially Black love. So,
Absolutely.
thank you for joining us, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me also.
Yes, I appreciate you coming. Well,
Thank
we're
you,
going to end
everyone.
our live. I don't see any questions right now. So